the Baen Free Radio Hour.
Welcome to the Baen Free Radio Hour. It's a pleasure to have you along. I am Baen Associate Editor and your podcast host, David Afsharirad. Today, we bring you a different sort of podcast. If you've been around the science fiction and fantasy worlds for a while, particularly if you're a convention goer, you might have heard about this con called LibertyCon. In fact, Baen published a book called Give Me LibertyCon some time back. LibertyCon is a completely unique con experience, and it is really something special, especially to the Baen community. But it's also hard to get tickets for. They often sell out very quickly, and so there's a limited number of people who can have this experience in person. So today, we're bringing you a discussion with some of the folks who attended LibertyCon this year about what makes the con so special, their experiences there, and some interesting con stories. DJ Butler facilitated the conversation, and he was joined by Griffin Barber, Robert E. Hampson, Marissa Wolf, Sean Patrick Hazlett, and Monalisa Foster. So if you've never been to a LibertyCon, or if you have, you're going to want to give this podcast a listen or a watch. But first, the news. It's the hot as July John Ringo's ebook sale. It's the middle of summer and the mercury is rising, and John Ringo's Live Free or Die is back in trade paperback. So this month we're offering up scorching hot deals on Ringo's blazing backlist titles. Through the end of July, get John Ringo's entire back catalog in a special discount ebooks bundle. Save over $50 off list price when you purchase the bundle, or get $1 off individual titles to round out your collection. These prices are good through the end of the month and are valid wherever Baen ebooks are sold, though the one-click bundles are available only through Baen.com. For a complete list of the titles, head on over to the website. And that's it for the news.
Welcome, Baen Free Radio Hour listeners. I am DJ Dave Butler, and I'm here with a plethora, a horde of Baen authors, short stories, novels, editors, all the above. And we're here to talk to you about LibertyCon. And so rather than do kind of the conventional introduction with most recent, what's your book out now, Fred? I think we're gonna introduce ourselves in the context of LibertyCon. Hey, how did I come to get there? What's a fun anecdote about me and LibertyCon, et cetera, and then just we'll see what comes out of the conversation. So Marissa, I didn't actually warn anybody who'd be coming first, but in my heart, I knew all along, Marissa, it was going to have to be you.
I tried to leave and come back.
Yeah. I don't want to prejudice what story you tell us about LibertyCon, but you've had kind of an exciting LibertyCon just this last month. But tell us about you and LibertyCon.
Yeah. Cut in if I cut out. My Wi-Fi is being a giant jerk right now. So LibertyCon started for me in 2017 when my awesome friend Casey Izell said, "Hey Marissa, you should go to LibertyCon." And they did, because when Casey Izell told you to do stuff,
did not get any of that.
Dang.
I don't listen to a lot of people, but I listen to her. Speaker this time. Oh fuck. No.
So
Can anyone
Casey
hear me?
invited you. We got that Casey invited you.
Casey invited me. That's fine. I'm gonna leave and come back again, and you guys can talk about me while I'm gone, and we'll see if that works.
We'll talk about you when you're gone. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Thanks, love you. Yeah, now you hear me. All right, I'll be back.
It's true. You sound fine now. Sorry.
Oh shit.
Of course.
Like for real? Should I just stay?
As soon as you started cursing, it was like,
Well, try cursing a lot more. That probably works really well. That'll make
we've never heard that before.
the Chinese will focus on you. We must catch this.
That's right. It's the story of my life. The more
she's not
I curse,
cursing,
the
now
more
it's-
people are like, "Oh, Marissa, we should." Fuck, I'm gonna leave. I'll be back. Okay, bye.
Okay. All right, Griffin, you want to introduce yourself, talk about LibertyCon a little bit?
Sure. I'm Griffin Barber. I'm science fiction, fantasy author. Written a lot of short stories for different anthologies, both for Baen and other publishers. Have a couple novels out. But LibertyCon started for me, I think 2016 or 2015. Maybe it might have been earlier than that, but I went and I basically said I was only gonna go once I was a professional. And then it's also an added bonus for me because my parents retired about an hour outside of Chattanooga, where it's held annually. So I was able to kind of combine visits, and as it's around the 4th of July weekend, it's a whole thing for me. So I have lots of really, really cool memories of, both LibertyCon and my family setting off fireworks and all that kind of stuff. So for me, it's been really exceptional. I've had a lot of good times. Marissa was, I met her. I met Casey there. Casey is a co-author of mine for Second Chance Angel, and a number of other, couple of other short stories that we've written together. So it's a great opportunity to network. I met Robert there for the first time. I believe I met Monalisa there, though I may be wrong about that. And I certainly met you there, Dave. Although I think we might have been around each other at a World Fantasy at one point or something.
Might have been. Yeah, certainly playing Delta Green with you is one of my fond memories of LibertyCon. Something that I wish we did more of, and it seems like I've missed the last couple of years.
Well, it didn't happen this year because with Larry being guest of honor and everybody else kind of having all these obligations, I was like, unless somebody like yells at me to bring the stuff, I'm not going to tote the books, etc. So that's one of the things it's rare that you get to hang out with and talk to luminaries in any field. But military science fiction, Dave Drake used to go religiously to LibertyCon, so got to hang out with him. And then John Ringo has been there many times, and he's local to it. So there's a lot of different folks you can meet. But Steve Jackson Games, hanging out with him, talking to him, and playing games with the only guy left standing who's still an independent business from the gaming that I started when I was 10. Everybody else has been bought up by somebody or bought up multiple times. And here's, as far as I know, there's the only one, or they're publicly traded like Games Workshop. So
yeah.
Lots of experience.
One of my personal highlights from this year, from like 3 weeks ago or whatever it was, my daughter and I were at the coffee clatch. I'm never quite sure how to say that. And Steve Jackson just sat down next to us, and she had no idea. And I said, "So Isabel, this guy right here is the designer and publisher of Munchkin." And then she got all excited, right? Because that's
because who's dad, right?
Right. Right. And it was just super casual. It's just like one of those things that happens at LibertyCon,
Yeah, totally. That was the thing. So, and again, it's always such a very kind, polite, collective community that everybody's kind of into everybody else's stuff. We're showing common interest and enjoyment of the genre and of the games and of each other. We all get along, it seems like. So it's a pretty neat venue.
Yeah. Monalisa, I think that you you and I also met the first time at LibertyCon. But in addition to meeting me, what are some of your best memories? What are good stories you have to share about the event?
I started going there about 2017. I had entered into the Baen hard science fiction contest, the Jim Baen Memorial contest. And apparently I made it into the top 20 that year. So Bill Ledbetter said, "Have you ever heard of LibertyCon?" And I'm like, "No." And then I'm on the internet looking for it. I'm like, "Oh, okay." So my husband and I decided we're going to try this convention thing out. We'd only been to one or two other science fiction conventions over the previous 20 years. And we decided to go. And I met all of these wonderful people, including yourself and everybody on this panel, and people who've just become really good friends, and both fans and authors and editors. And it's kind of weird because I write science fiction, but they have everything. So even though, you know, you don't have to be just a science fiction writer or science fiction reader, you can be into all of these other things, and they have something for it, whether you're into costuming or you're into gaming or whatever, they've got it. And it's a very small con with just a lot of oomph packed into it.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. Rob, tell us about your introduction to LibertyCon. How did you start coming out?
You know, y'all make me feel old here because my first LibertyCon was 2008.
Oh, wow.
And I had been corresponding with John Ringo. I'd actually become one of his technical advisors. I'm Rob Hampson. I am a scientist as well as science fiction author. And my introduction to LibertyCon was because John said, hey, if you want to come to a convention, I'd actually been trying to get together and actually meet him face to face. We corresponded. He said, you ought to come to LibertyCon. It's a nice little relaxicon. You know, it's low pressure, low tempo. And Marissa's laughing because she knows exactly, you know, that for some of us, it's not low tempo anymore. But I then did, in fact, meet John Ringo at a local con, and he was setting up something in particular, a fun little project that involved taking video of something that he was mocking, creating a movie out of one of his books. And so I said, look, I've got cameras, I've got mics, I've got all sorts of stuff. We can do a multi-camera, we can play this. So he said, well, come to LibertyCon. He said, by the way, if you have to justify it, we have something called the Mad Scientist Roundtable. And so I went and I was introduced to the Mad Scientist Roundtable, where I found that there are actually scientists, real scientists writing science fiction, and there are real science fans, not just science fiction fans, but science fans. And it was a great community. As Griff says, we really do have, it's a great big family reunion is what it is. And it's an awful lot of fun. I've been going there continuously since 2008, and I wouldn't dream of doing anything else. Now, the thing about it is I got to meet the founder, Uncle Tim Bulgio, and he and I had actually been at another spin-off scientific-based meeting together where we were very badly behaved because we were cutting up and telling jokes with each other in the audience and distracting Tony Weisskopf while we were at it. And he got to know me, and I got a call one day saying, we'd like you to be our scientist guest of honor in 2015. And in 2014, he's running around our convention center hotel venue, the Chattanooga Choo Choo at the time. He's running around in a golf cart. And the golf cart was to get Timmy around. But what he did was he gave people rides back and forth between the convention center and their hotels because it was a good sized campus. And he's passing me going the wrong direction. I'm headed over to the convention center. I've got a panel coming. He says, Rob, hop on. I said, you're going the other direction. He says, doesn't matter. Hop on. I got to talk to you. And so he was delivering somebody to the room, and then we were heading back. And that was when he talked to me about, you know, going to this convention, being there as a scientist, which was just, you know, to me, absolutely unheard of. I had done some science fiction fan activities about 25 years prior, and I go, I wouldn't give my own name at the time. I used a pen name and stuck with it. And he says, no, you're here as a scientist. We want you as a scientist. So I've been going as both a scientist and then recently a science fiction author. It's just absolutely awesome.
Yeah. This is kind of to the point of what Monalisa was saying. Like, you can go there for science fiction and for fantasy books, but also for like the costuming and the pageantry. And Monalisa, I think the first year no, it wasn't the first year I went. It might have been the second. The first year we were in the Marriott, you did like a military parade kind of presentation in Tom Kratman's what's the name of the universe?
Carreraverse.
The
Carreraverse.
Yeah,
right? Am I
we all
remembering that right?
dressed up as the Amazon Legion and presented him with the flag.
That was awesome.
So there's that piece of it, right? But then interestingly, there's a surprising amount of actual hard science. Maybe this has to do with sort of the proximity to Huntsville, or just kind of the culture, even like the personal family culture of people like Tim Boljo or Tony Weiskamp. But I like to tell people it's kind of like a family reunion of like a big hillbilly family that's got a whole bunch of people who have been in special forces and a whole bunch who are actual rocket scientists. And right. So okay. Awesome. Marissa, you're back. Let's try your audio again.
Marisa has to use interpretive dance and sign language.
I'm very sorry for all of you. I have no rhythm. Yeah, I feel like you called on me to go first, and I pulled the old like, I have to go. Except it was my internet. Yeah. So LibertyCon, I went because Casey Zell told me to, and she's one of the only people who can tell me what to do, and I will listen. So I went in 2017. And she was so right, and it was so amazing, and it's one of the highlights of my year every year. Brandy and her crew just run an amazing show, and I get to be a nerd for a weekend, and now I get to be a professional nerd, which is pretty cool. Because I went from being like full-on fan to like having a short story, I think at my second LibertyCon, to having a couple of co-written novels, to having my very own novel coming out, and I got to see the whole cover for the very first time at this LibertyCon, and so that it feels like a really nice, really fun progression of getting to grow every year. So
yeah, Monalisa, was this last con the first time you'd seen your cover too, or the whole thing put together?
No, we had done the same thing, essentially the same presentation at Fantasy in March.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it was. LibertyCon was a little bit more intense than Fantasy.
Yeah, and like I can't remember who I was telling. It might have been Rabbit Boyd. I said, look, it's like the Baen Roadshow, like the archetype of Baen Roadshows is not the one at Dragon Con, it's the one at LibertyCon, right? Where it's wall to wall to wall to wall, and it runs an hour and 40 minutes, right?
I'm sorry, that's conservative.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, with a lot of energy, right? And people are bought into the jokes and the culture, and
Yeah, Tony calls it sprinting a marathon. That's what she told me. She said
that checks out.
She calls it a marathon sprint to get through it all.
Yeah, no lies detected.
Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah. You might describe, that might be a good way to describe Tony's experience of LibertyCon, by the way. I mean, one of the for sort of Baen readers and writers particularly, right?
Yeah.
LibertyCon is geographically so it's near the 4th of July every year. It's held in Chattanooga. It used to be in the Choo Choo. Now it's in the downtown Marriott. Geographically, it's close enough to Tony Weiskamp that she's sort of the perpetual resident editor guest of honor, right?
Yeah.
Which means she's hyper scheduled. So she's like, on the one hand, it's a good place to meet her. On the other hand, it's a terrible place to meet her because everybody wants to.
I definitely do that thing every time I see her where I'm like, do you want me to come over? Like,
Right.
Because I know that she'll wave off if she doesn't want me to. And so I always do the like kind of like, yes, okay, yes. No, okay, no.
That's kind of the perennial problem of any guest of honor or MC is because trying to talk to Chuck or Larry, at any time on these when they're going back and forth, they're super scheduled, and they're also being mobbed by fans as they go.
We should probably clarify. I'm sure that the Baen Free Radio Hour folks know who Chuck and Larry are, but Charles E. Chuck Gannon and Larry Correa, and they're the names that you could drop in any given LibertyCon are incredible.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
that was I was talking about, Dave was talking about gaming earlier, and the whole reason why I set up the Delta Green role-playing game was to have Dave Butler, Chuck Gannon, Larry Correa,
Yeah.
I can't remember, there's a couple other people, but
Mike Massa. Yeah.
Mike
Oh,
Massa,
yeah.
yeah.
Just the cool
So,
kids. It's fine.
yeah, just drop a few names on folks and talk about playing silly games together for a while.
It's pretty fun, like role playing sort of a commando scenario with like actual commandos, and I'm like, yes, I follow him.
Do
I
what he
also
says
do
to
that with my gun.
Yeah.
Checks
Sean,
out.
we have not got to you yet. That's just time. Last best of all, tell us about your contact with LibertyCon.
So I was recruited to go to LibertyCon by the CIA. That's only partly true. I was recruited to go to, so TC McCarthy, who's a former, or Dr. TC McCarthy, who's a former CIA guy, said, hey, you should go to this thing. So last year was actually my first time, and it blew my mind. It was, having been to a number of other conferences, it's just much more relaxed. You can focus on things that are important. You don't focus on things that make no sense. And, it wasn't in China this year like Worldcon was. So that kind of went quiet really quick. But anyway, and it just being, the highlight is being around people like Dave Butler. Rob, I wanted to meet with you. I was told to meet with you at some point by Sarah Hoyt, but I'm sure we'll have plenty of time for that. Griffin, I always see there. Marissa, I didn't get a chance to talk to you yet. And then Monalisa got a chance to see my unpolished, non-public personality, which I think she enjoyed, although it probably scared her too. Anyway,
It doesn't scare easy.
Once LibertyCon programming gets their hooks into you, they don't let go. I think I had more programming this year than even the year I was a guest of honor. It's just, and I walked away from the convention loving it, having met and talked with an awful lot of people, but the list of people I didn't talk with is probably longer.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also starting earlier. Like, it's like Dragon Con where, Wednesday's the new Thursday or whatever.
Which was the new Friday.
Yeah.
It's
Everybody's
but the key
starting.
difference between LibertyCon and Dragon Con is there aren't 30 billion people, and you're not sweating. And I've never been to Dragon Con for that reason, but I can imagine what it would be like. It's a much smaller, much more family friendly, relaxing event, but you can still get to do all sorts of good cool stuff and meet great people. And the other thing that I want to reiterate something that someone else said about the Mad Scientist panel. I went to my first Mad Scientist panel this year, and there's nowhere else in the world where you'd see some distinguished scientist talk about how UFOs are just people photographing hubcaps, and then Travis Taylor just eviscerating.
Oh, that's
awesome.
I thought we were going to have a knockdown drag out. Mad Scientist actually earned its name this year. We had a few scientists mad or engineers mad, but yes, it was.
And then there was some extensive credentialism too, as well. Like, my institutions were more prestigious than your institute. I mean, it was everything you could possibly imagine was just thrown out there. So
I had to throw in one of my own. I threw in one of my own. Just when I talked to so and so, he said, and I just had to counter the credentialism because it was definitely being thrown around.
Yeah, I mean, and you get to talk to guys like Les Johnson, NASA engineer, and actively doing the stuff that we write about and writing about it magnificently. Just really cool. And again, it's all about the like-minded folks that are interested in the future and how to make it better, and not being mired in talking about stuff that may be counterproductive to that end. So
Yeah.
One of my favorite
100%.
mad scientists was the year that Larry Niven and Jerry Purnell were there and participated in the Mad Science Roundtable. Was absolutely fascinating because
let's just name drop a little bit, Robert.
I know, so great.
but we're name dropping on behalf of LibertyCon.
Yes,
I know.
absolutely.
That's right.
And it was just fantastic listening to them.
Yeah.
Because if you read some of the more personal writings of Niven and Purnell, they're talking about, oh, they went up to JPL and got a tour. They went to Caltech. They went to Stanford. They were visiting this laboratory at Oak Ridge and all these kind of things. And then these guys are there weighing in on science and science fiction and fantasy. And this is the type of atmosphere that LibertyCon fosters, and it may be a change in generation, passing on the torch. But I hope that readers of the future are going to see some of these names of folks we're talking about and look on them the same way. I really do.
Well, that was one of the things that got me in this latest iteration of LibertyCon. Is my brother was former U.S. Army paratrooper, et cetera. I didn't serve myself, but one of the things that came up was I lived overseas quite a bit, had Russian friends, et cetera. But before the wall came down, even. So while we're there, we have this insurrection that happens amongst the troops, or and it was like a scenario out of David Drake. Hammers, slammers, rolling hot. They're going to go, what, you don't want to give us what we need? You're going to try and attack us. We're going to go roll back into the Capitol and displace you. Didn't turn out that way. But one of the fascinating things about that is that I could turn to the Marine colonel, or I could turn to the Army colonel. I could talk to the SEAL. There's rarely in a civilian life.
Or the war gamers.
Or
the
war gamers.
The professional war gamers. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the professional war gamers and the think tank folks, the DARPA folks, all that kind of stuff. You could just turn to them and go, well, what do you think? Instead of just, internet rando.
And then they give you
Not
this
anonymous
look.
Twitter.
They give you this look. They go, no, I can't talk about that.
Yeah. Or they give you the toned down version of what they can talk about. And it was pretty fascinating to kind of look at this real time and get this assessment from professionals in the field. So again, that's something you can't get elsewhere.
Yeah.
And everybody gets along, even though they might be Army or Marine or Navy.
That was fun. When Chuck was the MC, Chuck Gannon, Charles E. Gannon was the MC. Might have been 2019 or something, pretty recently, right?
Yeah.
And in his remarks, he asked people to raise their hands if they were, and he had this long list, right? And if you're active duty, if you're reserves, if you are a contractor for the government, and you can't tell us what you do. People's hands were going up.
That was real.
Right?
Yeah.
In the audience. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, and again, it's a unique experience, and it sells out every year within a few hours now. And they keep it intimate by keeping the numbers down. As Sean was talking about, it's not the chaos, the sublime chaos that Dragon Con is, and it's the ratio of pros to fans and those that are on the stepping stones to becoming pros from fandom are very frequent. It's a lot of crossover kind of stuff, just like you're saying, and raise your hand if, and you get all these folks. But yeah, Air Force, everybody was represented. I think there's even a couple of coasties too. So
yeah,
we've got at least one Space Force person.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I didn't even remember that. That's how, again, showing how old I am.
Yeah. Well, and people with NASA or other
private companies, a lot of NASA folks.
Is the whole So this family kind of aspect, like there is actually a family that drives LibertyCon that kind of is right. So Tim Bulger, by the way, Tim is how I got invited to LibertyCon. I was at WorldCon, right? in Kansas City. So whatever year that was, 2015 or something, maybe 2016. Yeah. And I was walking along and seeing the sort of Worldcon audience that you see, right? And this guy out of my beyond my peripheral vision says, "Hey, you're DJ Butler." And I stopped and there's this guy in overalls. And like, first of all, he totally had my attention from that moment, because, people are like with the funky blue hair with the fuchsia streak, or they're like, and this guy looks like he's a farmer. And he goes, he says, "You're DJ Butler. You got a book coming out from Baen next year." I said, "How do you know that?" And he said, "Well, I know things. Listen, you really ought to come to LibertyCon." And I talked to him for a couple minutes, and he wound up saying, "Just tell him Uncle Timmy sent you," right?
Yeah. With a sly look. It was always kind of like,
right. Right. And he's sitting there playing hearts or something at a table of 4, right? So, and that was Tim Bulger, the founder. And Tim passed a couple of years ago. His daughter, Brandy, was Brandy Bulger, is it Hendren?
Bulger Hendren now, yeah.
Yeah, recently married. And now Brandy runs it, right? And she basically grew up with the con, probably give or take a few years, is probably about the same age. And so it literally is a family thing. And then there is this aspect where attendance is capped, right? Which was never a problem until, again, about something like 2019. And first of all, if you get in, they reserve a ticket for you next year, right? So like, that's kind of a family thing too, right? Like, once you're in, you're in. And then the tickets that are...
I didn't know that they did that.
I think they do that if you've been a guest of honor.
Oh, maybe that's it.
Fancy people.
Maybe I just spoke out of
fancy
school.
folks.
Yeah, not for me. I have to go
I don't know.
in the pit.
I take that back. Of Shari Rod, edit that bit out. Sorry. So
JK.
let me retract that piece, since you guys are not on the list. But the capping, it's interesting, right? And was never a problem until a few years ago, when there was one morning when tickets went on sale at 6 a.m. and by 6:29 they were sold out, right? And somehow, and it had never been that way before. It had been like, oh, they go on sale in July, and in October they'll sell out or something, right?
That was the day of weeping.
That was the day of weeping.
There was gnashing of teeth. Yeah.
And I don't know the history of that, right? Maybe some of that is it was sort of post Sad Puppies, and people were trying to find a place to go that was less like political, or maybe that's it. But the result is the con stays small. You see a lot of the same people, and like literally it's the same staff and the same family running it.
Well, and yet though, if you look at this group, we got Sean. Did you say it was your first one or your second one this time?
Second one.
So only 2 years back, Monalisa was how many? 5 years?
Yeah, 2017. So yeah,
6 years then, or 5 years of actual cons.
Yeah. Right.
And Marissa about the same, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, and I can't remember. I think I know it was at the Choo Choo, and I think it was like 13 or 14. It was the year Black Tide Rising came out, the anthology. So I think it was 14, 15, maybe 13.
Oh, the anthology was 14. Yeah.
14. Okay, so yeah, there we go. So yeah, and so it's very welcoming of new people, but you got to get in. You got to get in. So, but I of the cons that I was always religiously going to World Fantasy. I went to Worldcon too many times, and I went to Dragon Con my first time. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going back to Worldcon anymore. And it was just because the fan experience is so much younger, so much more vital, and inclusive. They really want to have everybody there. They want to have a good time. And LibertyCon is that same atmosphere, except that, and again, it should be mentioned that all the proceeds from the con go to charity at LibertyCon, and it's changes. They kind of have a rotation because they want to give to as many people as possible. They also have the blood drive there. And they've given, I can't even recall how much, and then they'll have the charity auction, and charity, I think there's part of that is the art show, but like this year, Larry's Gritty Cop Show, which despite being a 20-year veteran, I've never been invited to. I don't know why.
You should bid on it, Griffin.
I'm not bitter. Oh yeah, that's probably it. I'm not charitable enough. But yeah, they got nearly $5,000 and it was sold in minutes. Like all 5 seats were gone in minutes.
So these
In a
are
bidding war.
these are seats at a tabletop role playing game.
Yeah, for like 2 hours of fun, and
Right.
they shelled out nearly $5,000 for their fun time with Larry.
When we talk about the family nature, we're saying that there are many people who run their own science fiction conventions that come to LibertyCon to have fun.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And some of them even volunteer with the staff, but they really do. They're coming there to have their own fun and to play and see all of their friends. And they run their own cons.
Yeah.
And they come to LibertyCon because it's, it's family.
Yeah.
I can have fun. Oh, go ahead.
No, please.
Just say, I could have fun anywhere at LibertyCon, like in the lobby, in the bar, in a random room, in the little cubby behind the elevators, in an elevator, like on the escalator on the way to the convention center. Like everybody is so welcoming and so wonderful, and people I don't know are still so welcoming and friendly. Like I saw a ton of people looking for people with a first timer badge so that they could make a point to introduce themselves. That's amazing. That's amazing. That doesn't happen at every con.
Right.
One of the things, Griff, I think you were maybe alluding to is that LibertyCon, like DragonCon, like WorldCon and World Fantasy, is a con where business can get done. It's a professionals con, right? Like it's not a. There are cosplayers. Monalisa is, I think, one of the very prominent cosplayers. I've seen Monalisa in very cool samurai gear.
Not so much recently though. She's
mellowed.
gone into that author
She's
sphere
teaching
pretty hard.
classes, man. Yeah.
This is a good time for her to pull out the tiara.
No comment.
Love
He
it.
meant katana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
No, those are back there.
yes, yes.
But but this is a place where you can meet with your editor and where book publishing contracts sometimes in fact do get signed, right? And where an editor of an anthology will say, hey, listen, I'm trying to fill one more slot and you seem like an interesting person. How do you feel about writing a story about a world war in China with some kind of strange element, right?
Well, no, that's how Casey and I met for 2 reasons. Number one, she was on the Black Tide Rising anthology, and I had talked to John about doing that, and it never came around. But after talking at something, Casey was like, "Hey, we're standing around having a drink or two, or I am, and others are." And Casey's like, "Hey, you're Griffin, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "I'd pay you to just talk to me, read from the phone book."
Right.
I have this face for radio, and which includes a voice that's sometimes useful. But she, and talking to her, she was talking about doing different anthologies and stuff like that, and she was really excited about an idea she had for an anthology, which was doing a noir anthology and femme fatale anthology. And so, but she knew that on her own, she probably didn't have the name to pull the major talent that she would need to make it a viable anthology to sell really well. So she's like, Larry's got this huge, cool idea about, the Grim Noir series, and I know he's really into noir, so I'm going to hit him up. And she's chatting with different people about this idea, and everybody's like, "Yeah, go, Casey, go." And she's always like a consummate networker. She's always like, "You two should meet." She's like, "I think you and Mike Massa will get along swimmingly." And yeah, Mike Massa and I are really good friends now, and that kind of thing. I mean, and some people end up working with her as well, just on stories, which I did as well. But the ability to connect with folks, yeah, I think at least 2 out of the 3 here, or 3 out of the 5 authors.
We don't do
so
math this time.
Yeah, and
Only Monalisa does math.
yeah, there we go. But yeah, there's always an opportunity, but you don't have to be. You're not feeling pressured to do it. That's one of the cool things is it's not like it's all pros and they're going to look at you funny for being having a fanish moment, that kind of thing. I mean, I really have always enjoyed David Drake's work and being able to hang out with him. I'd met him at a World Fantasy a couple of times, but to see him kind of in his element at LibertyCon was really very refreshing for me, and I believe for him too, because it's like Robert was saying, it's kind of a relaxicon. It is, at least they can let their hair down. They don't have to be on guard all the time and worried over much about fan interactions that might be weird or something like that, because it is a smaller convention. So lots of fun to be had, and again, always for a good reason. The fact that they've given away so much money to charity just is huge for me. I think it's really, really neat.
Yeah. Monalisa, I feel like we haven't heard enough from you. Have you saved up a good story to tell here?
I think everybody that I ended up working with, either in an anthology or some other way, that led up to me actually finishing a book that Tony was willing to look at and buy, occurred because I went either to LibertyCon or one of these other cons. So I highly recommend it for anybody that is thinking about becoming an author, because the networking really is invaluable. And like they said, it's fun. You can do all sorts of hobby related stuff, like, that doesn't have to be with the professional aspect of it. But I think one of the reasons that the professional aspect of it does work is because you have all of these hobbies in common.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody, the common love is what's bringing us together anyway. It's about everybody loving the genre and the works that are included in that.
Yeah.
There's an
Go ahead,
There's an
Rob.
awful lot of paying it forward going on as well. I've had many talks with authors who have given me advice. I had somebody come up to me and hand me a copy signed of their first sale because they had come to me and asked for stuff about it. And I had given some critique and some advice. And the next thing I know, I'm getting an email that says, I sold it. And then he was in front of me at LibertyCon saying, here, this is for you. And it's just the overall interactions are incredible. Just being able to do that with somebody. And, and again, it's figuratively sitting at the feet of the people who shaped us and listening, just sitting there listening, because there's some particular old timers that they hold court no matter what. Yeah. And nobody minds because you're just sitting there listening and learning. And then you meet people like Dave Butler, and I met you as Dave, and then I think I came up to you at LibertyCon last year or the year before. I said, wait a minute, you're DJ Butler.
That's awesome.
You wrote Rock Band Fights Evil. And he goes, well, yeah. And I go, that was like the first book I read on Kindle. And just great stuff like meeting people. And yeah, fanboy moments. Yeah. Still fanboy moments going on all the time.
Yeah. And sometimes people will sort of refer to it tongue in cheek. And I think this is because, as I said earlier, Tony lives so close and is basically there every year. So people will sometimes call it, Baen Con or
yeah, and that's something I never really got, because when I started was the rise of Chris Kennedy and right. That kind of stuff. They were starting to really have a lot of pull and bring a lot of folks in. It may be BaenCom or BaenCon, but it really is much more inclusive than that, especially on the indie side. There's so many indie folks and hybrid authors, and because I believe that Monalisa, you're a hybrid too, right?
Right. So I have some stuff that's self-published and some stuff that is traditionally published, and that's in case anyone doesn't know what that means.
Yeah.
I'm not part planned.
Yeah, inside baseball there.
This time, yeah.
But also people like Steve Jackson, right? And also people like, Kevin Anderson or Mike Stackpole are people who show up, and I think she had to cancel.
Timothy Zahn.
Yeah, Tim Zahn was there this year. Shauna McGuire, a year before this one, was supposed to be the guest of honor. I think
like
might have got
COVID.
COVID or something.
Yeah.
Right? But
health
like
concerns, yeah.
it's Baen rich. It's not Baen exclusive, right? In any sense.
Yeah,
Well, and
it's the people
especially-
who love sci-fi and fantasy. Like it's
Mhm.
yeah.
especially in light of the science track that is so robust that, you know, it brings on all these folks that, you know, again, the same kind of thing, like with the Russia situation. I mean, I was kind of hoping that they would have made that FDA announcement about the chicken, the vat grown chicken. I wish they would have made that
While we
prior,
were there.
so I could have hit somebody up about, hey, what's this going to be about? Because that's straight out of, you know, any spaceship thing,
Mhm.
you know, Voyage of the Star Wolf, you know, they have the vat grown everything kind of thing. And it, watching 60 Minutes the other night, they literally walked right through that. You know, they did the whole thing about vat grown chicken, and it's been FDA approved. So yeah, the such a robust science program, you know, it makes it very, very multifaceted.
Yeah, and you get all
Just
sorts
to
of
add-
like,
Just
Go
to
for it,
add to that point, and I'm going to sound crazy because this has not really been well disseminated throughout traditional media streams. Travis Taylor was there discussing UAPs about, 2 or 3 weeks after a DoD whistleblower came out and alleged that the US government had a crash retrieval program and bodies. So, like, Travis Taylor was there fielding questions on that, on that very topic. So just to, like I said, Griffin, you're spot on with that point.
yeah. And we also get things like the No Shit There I Was panel, right? Which the late night panel where
I don't know what you're talking about, man. Never been there.
okay, where first responders and veterans, military people basically tell, borderline tall tales drawn out of their experience, right? No,
Yeah, they're entirely tall.
Yeah,
No
we're
facts-
super made up.
None of it's
No facts
true.
involved.
Yeah.
Names have not been
Resembling-
changed because they never existed.
Resemblance to anybody living or dead, purely
Yep.
coincidental.
No,
Yeah.
never seen Crack of the Crack or Brown Meets Blue. None of that stuff's ever
Oh
happened.
gosh.
Yeah, you see sometimes organized groups going out to the shooting range before the con on a Saturday morning, or so there's a pretty diverse range of stuff.
I heard there was a panel of sailors tell sea stories,
Oh yeah.
and I missed it. I would have loved to have heard it because I learned after the fact that between panel and audience, 5 guys looked at each other and said, "You were on submarines? I was on submarines." And in fact, 3 people were on the same submarine at the same time.
Checks out, yeah.
Wow.
That's fun.
The small world.
Well, listen, let's do this. Let's how about this? Let's go around and give like a tip. Like if you in the audience are thinking about attending LibertyCon for the first time, what's a tip you would give someone? And let's see. So let's see who's been going the longest. Rob, like 2008. Rob, if you had to give like one LibertyCon tip to a newbie, what would you say?
If you try and get a ticket and you don't get it, then immediately email and get on the waiting list, because having to reserve a ticket, a membership a year in advance, so many things happen that I think about 10% or more, maybe even as much as 15% of those people find out they can't go.
Right.
And so get on that waiting list, because you actually stand a pretty decent chance of being able to go. So
I think they
if
cycled
you
all the way through this year, right? Like I think everyone on the waiting list up to a certain point got in.
It's
Yeah.
May
literally
very
how
well
I
have.
get in every year.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, we're on the West Coast out here, so it's a little difficult to
Ooh.
get up at crack of dawn and get on there and take care of it.
4 a.m.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's awesome, speaker. That's a great tip.
All right, Monalisa, how about you? What's a tip you want to share with people who might attend?
Pace yourself. One of the big complaints I hear from everybody is that I want to go to all of these panels and they're all on at the same time. So if you cannot pace yourself, figure out how to clone yourself. Or get together with a friend and go to separate separate panels and then compare notes. Because I still even went into this. It's like, I wish I was 3 people.
Yeah, fantastic.
Call now. Cloning vets are waiting.
Yeah.
See, I knew Rob would get right on that.
Oh.
He's the guy to talk to, for sure.
Sean, what do you think? Suggestions?
So I want to echo that first suggestion because that's literally how I get in every year. And I mentioned this earlier, but definitely attend the Mad Scientist panel. I didn't know about it my first year, and then this year I went and attended, and it's awesome. So I highly, highly recommend it. Also, in terms of, you don't have to attend everything. It's also a good relaxing con, late at night, get a drink, sit down, and you'll be surprised at people you meet and you can sit down with and they will talk to you because it's such a small con. It's just, there's not, unless you're trying to get to Tony Weisskopf, which I kind of just know it's a given. You just she will summon you if she has time for you. Otherwise, give her some space. But also you get free pizza from Dave Butler as I did, some free Pizza Hut pizza.
Nice.
So highly recommend you hang around Dave Butler because you might get some free stuff. If somebody, if the wind or the skinwalker doesn't blow a chair into the fire at you, but that's a separate story. But
So much, so many secrets.
Sean and I went to went right next to Skinwalker Ranch and went camping. And either there's 2 possible explanations. Either in the middle of the night, a skinwalker destroyed our camp chair with lasers, or possibly it got blown into the fire. We don't know which one. One of those 2 things seems to have happened.
Lasers does seem more likely. I mean,
but the lasers or the wind did not blow the chair in your direction, Dave. It blew the chair in my direction.
Hey, it's clean living, Sean. The power of my clean living repelled the chair. Marissa, if you got a tip, what tip have you got to share with prospective attendees?
Yeah, so if you're going because you want to network and meet people, think about your energy. And if you need like a buddy, like I am very awkward by myself, but with a friend, I can chat. I can have a good time. It's gonna be great. Like if I had just like tried to go up and meet Griffin Barber, it would have been a shit show. But because Casey introduced us, we made jokes until like 3 a.m. and it was great. So like you might need a friend, you might need to be on your own, but think about how your energy works. And when networking, sometimes just let the moment happen. I feel like when you try to force it, it gets real uncomfortable. And like everyone's been saying, it's a really chill con. Like you might be really busy if you're speaker, because he is very in demand. But it's chill. People want to chill. They want to be on all the time. They want to relax. And so like, just go and listen to the stories. Like Speaker and Griffin were saying, like some folks will just like have a seat and people will kind of gather around, sometimes literally at their feet, to listen to their stories. Just listen. You don't have to make a huge impression to get started and getting that networking. I don't think I did in 2017. And I wasn't trying to, I was just there and realizing, oh my God, I love this. And when you are somewhere that you love, that energy tends to be infectious. And that makes it much easier to meet people and network and do the kinds of things you want to do because you're happy to be there. So people are happy to be around you. So that's what I would say. Go have your goals, but think about how you want to show up around it with people.
Fantastic. Griffin, a piece of advice?
So it's kind of additive to what Marissa was saying, and it's the more you love a particular producer of content, the less you should say, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is hard when approached by a stranger to be told, I love you, and then have to have a regular conversation with that individual thereafter. So you can often see it. You almost always see it at a convention, but LibertyCon in particular, you'll see someone there going, and you can tell that they are containing their love.
Yeah.
Like it's a thermonuclear reaction inside of them. They're just, but they're doing it, and everybody appreciates that. And you are much more likely to have a longer, more valuable conversation, or to be able to ear hustle on a valuable conversation that you'll treasure forever, if you contain that initial desire to say, I love you. You know, I love you. I love your work. It's hard to, when a stranger says that to you, it's kind of hard to go, okay, yeah, cool, man. And not want to move on, you know, as quickly as possible because stranger just said they loved me.
Yeah.
Like real strong. Can I add something real quick there, Dave?
Yeah, of course.
So DragonCon and LibertyCon are two of my favorite things all year. My very first time at DragonCon, I met Anne McCaffrey, and I was that person. So one, she hit me with her scooter. It was amazing. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. And two, I froze. I was 24. I was my God, I was vibrating. And at that point, Anne McCaffrey was Anne McCaffrey. She was quite used to fangirls. And so she put me to work. She was like, you go get me some water. And I was like, oh, yes, ma'am. Like, I think I said maybe 2 words to her the whole time, but like I sat at her feet at the panel. She sent me to do errands for her. It was amazing. But if I had been allowed to speak to her, it would have been the worst. Like, because I think at the end I was able to say like, thank you so much. I love Pern. You're wonderful. And she's like, I know. Like, I seriously said, I love you. And she said, I know. Like, that is one of my best moments in the history of time. But had I vomited the word vomit of love, I wouldn't have had that experience. So sometimes freezing is okay. You can freeze and listen. The ear hustle is
and it's appreciated, even, you know, not even necessarily okay, but it's appreciated because again, you're not making things awkward for the others in the audience who didn't say I love you right away. Kind of thing.
So
vibrate with your joy.
That's funny. That suggests conversely that if you're going there as a professional, have a practiced response for when that happens the first time.
Somebody freezes.
Right,
just
whatever it is,
ready.
just be ready. Oh, this is it. Thank you very much. You're so kind.
This is the moment. Yes.
Yeah.
What do you do? You know, whatever it is, just don't look you've been run over.
But even, you know, one of my friends that I got him into the convention this year. He and I have played Steve Jackson games for, you know, decades, literally decades, and he got to meet Steve Jackson, and was like, he kept that in mind, that what I had said to him. He's also a pretty cool cat, but he kept that in mind what I was saying to him, and he just talked about family stuff, and he ended up having almost an hour-long conversation with Steve Jackson, because Steve wasn't, you know, in a mood at that moment to talk about games, because he talks about games all the time. And he had this grown-up conversation and exchanged numbers with my buddy.
Yeah.
So
cool.
it's again, the cooler you can be, and I don't mean this in like a cool kid sense, but just let it happen. Let it happen. It'll carry you there, especially LibertyCon. It will carry you there if you let it.
Yeah. Marissa's story reminded me of meeting an author with a similar name. Yes, related. But my sister was with me and had said I would like to meet such and such an author. Well, we sat down, and at dinner, we're sitting at the same table, and we just had a wonderful conversation without the oh, I love your work, and kind of stuff. We just and as a pro, you know, just sit and have a conversation goes so far. And afterward, I said to my sister, I said, well, what do you think? You just sat at a table at an hour talking with this person you said you wanted to meet. And she goes, it was awesome. Well, I learned from the host of the event later that this person said to the host, you know, I sat at dinner for an hour talking to a neuroscientist, and it was really awesome. And so, you know, one person's fan is another person's fan. You know, it goes both ways. And if anybody wants to go to LibertyCon or any con as a pro, stay open to the fans that do come up to you, or the people that want to talk to you, that, you know, they may not know who you are yet, On the other hand, if you can go away from any given con, having met one more person, learned one more name, and called that person by name, you will just absolutely make their day, make their con.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
For sure.
love
That's
that.
a great point.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that we didn't really talk about it or focus on it, but one of the other ways to get into LibertyCon is as a subject matter expert. So not necessarily as a scientist, but if you have expertise in weapons design, metallurgy, vampires, 13th century, whatever it is, it's likely that they'll be able to find a use for you. Rich Roller, especially as he's the programming director, he'll find somebody to utilize your particular areas of expertise. So if you want to get on panels and you want to hang out with folks, but you also want to contribute, and they always need volunteers, because again,
the number I think is 1/5 of the people registered memberships were on at least one panel.
That's awesome. I love that. That's a big tip, right? Just don't be a jerk. Anytime you go to, like, one, you have no idea who you're talking to half of the time. And they could be your next super fan, or they could be somebody that you actually read and you're obsessed with, and you don't know what they look like. Or they could be
an editor who's sitting on your manuscript.
Yes, that has happened.
So like, you never know. It's a good rule of thumb for the world that I feel like people are forgetting, but just don't be a jerk, because
I ended up sitting down at a table and found out that the editor had my manuscript one time. Yeah, that's awesome.
That's a very cool feeling. I just think about, like, I don't know, like the first time I met just about everybody here. I have not gotten to meet Sean in person yet, but I'm looking forward to it, Sean.
He looks just like that.
Yeah, he probably looks like that, right? Yeah, it's fine. But like, if I had been a jerk to any of these people, like, would I be where I am now? Probably not. Like, just because they're incredible
I think you would have. I mean, you have a wonderful laugh.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Yes, I am very compelling. But it's also because I'm usually not a jerk, unless people deserve it. But like, you just think about everybody you meet is freaking awesome, and you're meeting them for a reason. So don't be a jerk. Enjoy that you're meeting them, and like, go on your way.
I don't think you're capable of being a jerk.
I love you for saying that. I would never be a jerk to you, because unlike Monalisa, I can be frightened. I don't think Monalisa frightens easily, but I think Monalisa could hurt me.
But Monalisa can definitely frighten somebody.
That's what I'm saying. She could hurt me. And I want her to love me, not turn me into a vampire.
The only thing the only people who have to worry about me are restaurant chairs. Which apparently Rob?
That's excellent.
Anyway,
I saw one of those. Yes.
Very specific. You should definitely ask her about that at a con, you guys.
No, ask Rob. Ask Rob. He tells it really good.
All right, so it's okay. So
not now, though.
Not now.
Okay, fine. Another time we'll do that. Well, let's do this. Let's just every one of you has either a book that's recently come out or something that's coming out next. So let's just go around and kind of tell what's next or what's most recent, your choice, and then we'll wind up. So I'll go the other direction. Griff, what have you got coming out next, or what's your most recent thing?
I believe it's going to be one of two short stories that are going to be in different anthologies. I'm in the latest and greatest of the Black Tide Rising anthologies with John Ringo's zombie stuff. I've got a short story in that, and then I've got Casey Azell and Larry Correa put together a third anthology, Down These Mean Streets. It's another noir anthology, and that features the return of my necromancer character, and I'm excited about both of those coming out. And then I'm working on the third installment of the 1632 universe stuff. For me, anyway, my third installment of it, which deals with the Mughal Empire and Princess Jahanara. And then I've got some gaming stuff that I'm working on for Steve Jackson. and it's going to be the 1632 universe addenda or universe book for GURPS.
Oh, very interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm
Wow,
super
very
excited
cool.
about that.
All right, Marissa, what have you got coming up next or soon that you want to talk about?
I mean, February is soon. So in February, my very first all by myself novel comes out from Baen. It's called Beyond Enemies. It has a very beautiful cover that I am very much obsessed with. So February 2024, keep an eye out. I will also be in the noir anthology alongside legends like Griffin, Barber, which is very exciting. And most recently, two things. Chicks in Tank Tops, where you can get a preview of my novel. You can meet some characters who will be in it in Next Question in Chicks in Tank Tops. And then you get Chicks in Tank Tops. So how can you say no? And also, we mentioned Chris Kennedy Publishing earlier. So Chris Kennedy Publishing, I got to write A Team in Space, which was pretty fun. So that is in Phoenix Initiative First Missions, an anthology from the Four Horsemen universe. So it was super fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Sean?
So several things. The first thing that everybody should do right now, because you can order it online on Amazon, is Weird World War China, which comes out in January, but you can pre-order it now. And the more pre-orders, the sooner you'll get it. So the other books that you should check out are the two prequels to that. So there's Weird World War III, which is about the U.S. essentially fighting Russia, which was published in 2020, and then it kind of happened. So I fully expect China to go the same way. There's also the book in between, which is Weird World War IV. We're not there yet, but we always could. But just imagine combining military science fiction and fantasy with a weird element. Okay, so think of like Stephen King's The Mist, things like that. Not just horror, but science fiction, fantasy, etc. Also, I have two short stories in, one's in Robo Soldiers, which Baen had released, I think, last year, as well as Worlds Long Lost. I think Dave's in that one too. And there might be,
I am as well, yeah.
Yeah, Griff is in there too. So definitely check those out.
Very cool. Monalisa, what have you got coming up?
In August, the September-October issue of Analog comes out, and I have a novelette about a quantum entangled creature. So I sold a hard science fiction novelette to Analog, which
That's
still,
awesome.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that happened. And then in December,
Awesome.
Threading the Needle comes out from Baen, which is my, which is about a sniper, a female sniper, in kind of a different kind of setting, which I hope you guys will enjoy.
It sounds amazing.
It's kind of a science fiction with some Western influence and also some sort of Restoration Japan.
Yeah, I wrote it as a space opera. I pitched it as a space opera. It came out a space Western kind of, and military sci-fi, and a few other things. I think I'm still trying to figure out what it is exactly. So apparently cross genres is my thing for some reason.
So is that like maybe like a little kind of Firefly feel to it? Is that kind of a way to think about it? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a team like there was in Firefly. It's a little bit more focused on a single character. But yeah, you've got this Meiji Restoration kind of setting. Basically, in the city where the spaceport is, you have something akin to 21st century technology. But the further you go out from the spaceport, so the further you go out in like the wild, the less technological it gets. So a lot of the story takes place in more of a Western, something that you would see either in a spaghetti Western or in a samurai movie.
Yeah.
Kind of setting.
Oh, very exciting. Rob, what have you got recent or soon that you want to talk about?
I've got this little book called The Moon in the Desert. You may not have seen any references to it around. The Moon in the Desert is my homage to the $6 Million Man. And a lot of it is based on some real life experience I've had working alongside the people who are creating bionics and brain controlled interfaces for computers, for prosthetics, and the like. I too have a story in the upcoming noir anthology. I was also had a story in Chicks and Tank Tops. So Chicks and Tank Tops, which is a very light feel, I wrote very, very dark. And for the noir anthology, which has by nature a fairly dark setting, I wrote very, very light. So I'm a contrarian, which is also why I am working simultaneously now on a sequel to The Moon in the Desert called The Sands of Mars. And also, meanwhile, I am 2/3 of the way through a Black Tide Rising novel set in Hawaii.
Wow, very cool. Is that you co-writing with John, or is that just a Rob Hampson solo novel?
Well, that's me writing with John's permission and somewhat Tony's permission. She claims she'd never heard of me talk about it before, although I know I've talked with her about it before. And so I just had so much material, I wrote it down, and then I'll see what they think about it.
Nice.
Oh, very exciting. Well, thank you all for joining us on the radio hour. Congratulations on all your successes, your recent, your upcoming publications, and I look forward to seeing you all hopefully, next July, if not sooner.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And hopefully much sooner, yes.
Yeah.
Come on, we need to not wait so long before seeing each other.
Yes.
And now we bring you our audiobook serialization of Tinker by Win Spencer. Inventor girl genius Tinker lives in a near-future Pittsburgh, which now exists mostly in the land of the elves. She runs her salvage business, pays her taxes, and tries to keep the local ambient level of magic down with gadgets of her own design. When a pack of wargs chase an elven noble into her scrapyard, life as she knows it takes a serious detour. Tinker finds herself taking on the Elven Court, the NSA, the Elven Interdimensional Agency, technology smugglers, and a college-minded xenobiologist as she tries to stay focused on what's really important, her first date. Armed with an intelligence the size of a planet, steel-toed boots, and a junkyard dog attitude, Tinker is ready to kick butt to get her first kiss.
It took hours. News of Windwolf's condition spread through the commune. Despite the frantic shuffle of leaving and incoming postdocs, many of the scientists stopped by to lend a hand. Hot food was carried from the kitchens. Biologists came to help with the first aid efforts. When the phones came back online at 8 in the morning, the biologists fielded phone calls from Earthbound scientists looking for specimens and data forgotten during the caller's last trip to Elfhome. They even ran Lane's data transfer. At 10, a van arrived to pick up botanical specimens that Lane had collected and quarantined over the last 30 days. Lane had to supervise, making sure that only the most harmless of Elfhome's biological flora were loaded, even though the most deadly, like the strangle vines and black willows, probably wouldn't flourish without magic. The drivers complained about the 10 hours to travel the 10 miles in from the rim, unloaded the truck of food and supplies, stared at the improving Windwolf in open curiosity, and then hurried off, hoping aloud that the 12 hours of shutdown remaining would be enough time to reach the rim again. They prompted an exodus among the scientists who were returning to Earth. Finally, the house emptied, and Tinker sprawled on a white wicker chaise stolen from Lane's sun porch. Lane found her nearly asleep and tapped her on the cheek with a printout. Tinker slit open her eyes, took the paper, and closed her eyes again. "What's this?" "Carnegie Mellon University reviewed your application. Apparently, they've been able to confirm your father's alumni/faculty history prior to their hasty move out of Oakland. They were impressed by your placement tests, and they've accepted you. They're offering you a scholarship, and your living costs would be handled by the Displaced Citizen Fund. They're trying to decide if you qualify for the in-state tuition scale. If we get your reply out today, you can start in the fall. Lane? Tinker kept her eyes shut, not wanting to see Lane's excitement. They were impressed by my placement tests? How? I know I didn't get any of the questions right. I applied just to make you happy. I didn't think they would accept me. I thought I made sure they wouldn't accept me. I don't want to go. Frosty silence. Tinker could imagine the disapproving look. Even with her eyes closed, it had Medusa-like powers. Tinker, Lane said, apparently realizing the magic of her gaze alone wasn't working. I didn't push this last year because you weren't legal yet, but now you can come and go without worry. You're wasting your life in that scrapyard. You are the most brilliant person I've ever met, and you're twiddling with junked cars. Oh, the dreaded scrapyard attack. The scrapyard pays the bills, gives me parts to work with, and all the spare time I could want. It lets me do what makes me happy. If I want to spend 3 weeks inventing hover cycles, I make hover cycles. Any university or corporation would outfit you with a state-of-the-art lab. Tinker made a noise of disgust. No, they wouldn't. She cracked her eye, glanced over the paper, double-checking her facts before finishing. See, I would be a freshman, whatever the hell that is, on probationary status due to the unusual nature of my schooling and lack of exposure to normal human society. They're not offering me a lab. They will, as soon as they see your full capabilities. Besides, a term or two of liberal arts classes could only help you. There's so much you don't know. Maybe about Oni, but not about quantum mechanics. There's more to life than just physics. Shakespeare, Mozart, Picasso. You'll be exposed to the entire range of human culture and meet intelligent people your own age. People my age are immature. She sat up, scrubbing at her hair and wincing as she hit a sore spot. What's a bloody rush? Can't I think about this until next shutdown? Lane pressed her mouth into a tight line, meaning she didn't want to answer the question, but her basic honesty forced her to. You should go before you start to date. Lane held up a hand to check a protest. I know you're not interested in any of the local guys yet, but it's only a matter of time before your curiosity overcomes repulsion. And once you get entangled with a man, it's so much harder to walk away. With Johnny Be Good fresh in her mind, Tinker said, Oh, ick. I don't think that's really a danger, Lane. At CMU, there will be hundreds of intelligent boys your age who are more interested in graduating than getting married and having kids. Okay. She cried to stop the flow. Give me a little while to think about it. It was the last thing on my mind. Speaking of what was mostly on her mind, she asked, How is Windwolf? Stable. I'd like to think he's stronger than when I first saw him. I think he's out of immediate danger. Rain still smeared the windows, graying the world beyond. The flatbed sat deep in Lane's prize flower beds. Rain-filled tire ruts ran across the yard and through the crushed flowers and the dismantled fence. 6 deep channels of torn-up earth zigzagging through the perfect lawn until it was more mud than grass. Lane had spent hours and days and years working on her garden, crippled leg and all. It was going to take ages to right all the damage. Tinker stared guiltily at the mess and then looked at the paper in her hand. Lane had never asked, over the years, for any repayment for all the things she had done for Tinker. From comforting Tinker when her grandfather died, to advice on her menses, Lane had only given. Classes would start in September and run until before Christmas. 3 shutdowns. Just 90 days. And she could always bail early if she hated it. Okay, I'll attend one set of classes and give it a try." Lane went round-eyed in amazement. "Really?" "Yes." Tinker cringed before her excitement. "One semester, nothing more. I'll try it. I know I won't like it, and that will be that. We'll be square." Lane gave her a sharp look, which probably meant she wasn't happy with the idea that Tinker viewed college as a prison sentence, but didn't debate it. She leaned forward and kissed Tinker on the forehead. "Good. I'll email them your acceptance." Tinker hunched in the chair, watching the rain sheet down the glass, feeling as if she herself were sliding down a slippery plane, gray and formless. There was no doubting she'd pleased Lane. The xenobiologist had always expected Tinker's best, and in doing so, usually got it. Tinker had learned all the levels of Lane's praise, from the scathing backhanded compliment for a job sloppily done, to the Monalisa smile and swat for a clever but naughty act. Lane had bestowed her ultimate seal of approval, with a kiss. Perhaps it was good that she was going to give Earth a try. Tinker had carefully avoided Earth her whole life, afraid that if she left Pittsburgh, she wouldn't be able to return to Elfhome. Tinker grudgingly admitted to herself that it was childish to cling to the old and familiar, rebuking the new just because it was new. Didn't she pride herself at being extremely mature for her age? And yet, with her whole heart and soul, she didn't want to leave home. Tinker fell asleep sometime after that. Her sleeping mind twisted the day's worries and events and shaped them into her recurring maze nightmare. As a new twist, Johnny Be Good starred as a Tengu, transforming into a crow's form to steal her diamond-shaped purity. Tulu knew where Johnny had hidden the gem inside the maze, but only spouted nonsense for directions. Windwolf did his typical "failing your potential" speeches. Why him and not her grandfather Lane, she never could fathom. And suddenly the dream went off in a new, erotic direction. Asserting that he knew what was best for her, Windwolf held her down and kissed his way down to her groin. His soft hair pooled over her bare legs as his insistent tongue caressed at a point of pleasure she barely knew existed. She woke, with her abdomen rippling with the strength of her orgasm. What the hell was that? She lay in the same position as in her dream, legs parted and hips cocked up. Her pose merged with the dream memory so strongly that for a moment she wasn't sure if she hadn't truly experienced the sex act. Common sense seeped in as she became more fully awake. No, it had just been a dream. Too bad. She squeezed her eyes shut, stealing a hand down the front of her pants, trying to recapture that roiling bliss. Oil can clunked into the room, rain darkening his shirt. "Hey." Burning with embarrassment, Tinker yanked her hand out of her pants and tried to sound nonchalant. "Hey." Oil can shoved his damp hair back out of his eyes. "I went out to the trailer. The level indicators on the power sink are showing that we've only got a few more hours and then it's gone." Tinker looked at the darkening sky, seeing that dusk was coming on. "What time is it?" "Almost 7. 5 more hours until startup."
That was another installment in Win Spencer's Tinker, and that's it for the podcast. Thanks as always to Audible.com and podcast theme composer Ruth Judkowitz. Praise, thanks, and gratitude to Dave Butler, Griffin Barber, Robert E. Hampson, Marissa Wolf, Sean Patrick Hazlett, and Monalisa Foster for discussing LibertyCon with us today. And good night, Tony Daniel, wherever you are. This is David F. Shryrod coming to you from a soundproof bunker somewhere deep in the heart of Texas. Join us here next week at the hammering heart of science fiction and fantasy, and keep reaching for the stars.